So far we have spent some time on the client side doing HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then we moved to the server side and we did some web API to make the functionality on the server side accessible through the web. And this is where the web API fits. Now, the architecture that we will be following in this course, it's called a single page application architecture. And typically, this is how this architecture will look like. So we have the front end. This is the user interface. So in the back end, what we have is we have some logic, some computation logic that is typically reading and writing to some data store. And we want that logic to be accessible from the front end. Now, the front end is typically made up of components. For now, we will be using a simple front end using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that you have learned so far. The only thing that is missing in the puzzle is how to use JavaScript on the client side. This is what I'll try to explain towards the end of this session. So all the pieces of this puzzle you kind of have now, except for the database we are using files. Later on we will see how to use a proper database such as MongoDB. So you can think of the web API as the glue that allows you to connect the front end UI with the server end computation logic. They are connected through the web API. Now, in terms of interaction between the client side and the server side, a single page application really means when I load the application, I load one HTML page. In a single page application, you load one single page, typically called the shell page. And this shell page will have all the script and all the CSS and all the JavaScript needed for the application to run. And then from that time onward, from the first load, whenever the user clicks some links or does some action on the user interface, two things may happen. One is you might load a different component on the page. Same page, you load a different UI component. Or you might be going back to the server, getting some JSON data and updating the page. Or you might collect some data from the forms on the user interface and you send it to the web API using JavaScript. Those are the scenarios, but you will never reload the page again. That's the idea of a single page application. It has one single page, it's loaded how many times? Once. And from after that time of loading, that's it. You will only update the page by loading a new component. But for you to do this, your user interface must be component-based. It's not one piece. Your user interface is made up of multiple pieces. Just to make this more concrete, let me just show you my very, very simple application. You can consider it as a single page application. So this application is loaded once. It gives me the list of heroes. And then when I click here, let's say updates, the shell application does not change. There's no change. Only there is a new editor loaded up here. Okay? If I do add, same thing. There's a new editor comes up. There is no full page refresh. In fact, this part, which is the menu part, and if I have a footer or other parts, did not change. The only thing that changed is this middle part. So for example, the list of heroes could be one component. The editor to add a hero is another component. And the editor to update a hero is using the same hero editor component. So the elements of the page or parts of the page could be components, and you load them based on the user action. So when I click on heroes, I load the list of heroes component. When I click on add, I load the editor components and so on. You get the idea. So that's component-based UI. To keep in mind, on the server side, I don't generate the user interface on the server side. The server side, the responsibility of the server side is to do the actual computation logic, including a reading and a writing to some data source. And all that functionality is exposed to the rest of the world through the web API. Yes. Now, the UI generation and the navigation, how I manage the navigation, it's all done on the client side. And this is the power of SPA architecture, of single page architecture, which is compared to traditional architecture, which is the MVC architecture. In the MVC architecture, the client does not do much. They just get HTML and render it and show it. But in here, they have much more, the client has a much more active role at least they take care of the navigation. So if you look here carefully in this architecture, this is what the client is doing. They can access the data, reading and writing data via web API. It takes care of rendering and showing the user interface. It takes care of routing at the client side. What I mean by routing, when I click a particular link, the appropriate components get loaded into the page. And also it takes care of client state management. If I need to store some data on the client knows how to do so. On the server side, of course, it takes care of the data, the business logic, and make it accessible through web API. What I want to show you is I want to show you how I made this list of heroes and how I got those lists of heroes from the server side using web API, and then made use of that JSON that came back to build this page dynamically. This is a dynamic page. The actual data that is behind this page came to the page using an API. So when I made a request to the server side, what did I get back? This is what I got back. Plain JSON data. And then using JavaScript on the client side, what did I do? Transform this into a visual interface, in this case to a table. And not only this, if I click this, have a look at this. If I click this, it doesn't go to the server and gets back a page. No, it does not do so. What it does, it will go to this API here. It gets the details of the hero that I have selected. In this case, for example, hero 1. It takes that information, it builds a form on the client side and fill up the data of the form. And then when I save, it did exactly the same thing. It accessed a web API to submit what I have entered in the form. Same thing, when I do here add, I get an editor, I fill it up, and then when I submit, JavaScript will collect the data from the form and post it to the server side to create a new hero. Okay. Same thing here. If I delete, the same thing. If I delete, I click here, and I will call an API on the server side to delete that particular hero. So all I am doing in this session, what I want to explain in this session, how did I create the user interface to make the functionality of the application accessible to end users. And doing this on the client side, not on the server side. Okay, so before I do this, let's just do a very, very quick review of Web API and how I'm using Web API in this particular scenario. And then from that, I'll show you how I will make a user interface that is able to talk and communicate with the Web API. So first, let's start with the Web API. Well, let's start first, let's say, with the repository. It's easier to understand. So I have here a repository that is able to read and write from a file. And these are the methods this repository has. You can see here, it has get, it reads all the heroes. So by now you should be familiar with this type of code. Yes? Sorry? No, I mean conceptually you should be very familiar with reading and writing to files, no? Anyway, even if you are not familiar, it's super simple. It cannot be simpler than this. I'm basically importing the fs extra library and saying read file asynchronously, and when the file comes back, I return it. When the content comes back, I return it. So it's very simple. So I can also read one particular hero. I receive the hero ID. I will read all of them and then filter based on that hero ID. Yes? And then I will if I find a hero by that particular ID, I return it. Otherwise, I return an exception not found. For adding, I will read all the heroes in an array. Then I add the new hero to the array. So I read everything to the array, add a new hero, and then save the array back to the file. Okay? This is the inconvenience of using files. It's not very elegant. You have to read everything, append at the new record, and then save the whole array. But when we use database, inshallah, we will see. We will never do this. We will read exactly what we want and retrieve exactly what we want. We never read everything and save everything. But this is fine for now because we don't know how to use databases yet. For updating, of course, all is there. Okay, for updating, I read all the heroes, find that particular hero I am interested in, replace it, and then save back to the file. Okay, for deleting, the same thing. I read all, find what I want to delete, remove it from the array, and then save back the array. And that's it. This is what a repository is. And by the way, this is very common pattern called CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete. You will find it's very, very common. Get one particular hero, in this case, add, update, and delete. And it should be very straightforward. Is the repository clear? You see here, the repository has nothing to do with the web. It's just plain JavaScript that's able to read from files and write to files. And I can test it. You see here, I have a test file. Here. I'm testing it here outside the context of the web. It has nothing to do with the web. It's just a console application. If I run this, it tells me that I have 5 heroes and hero number 1, these are the details of hero number 1. Yes, please.
How do we get that plain JavaScript file to make it work with the web? This whole functionality is okay.
Very good.
Now, how do we get it to work with the whole architecture?
Very good. So what we need to do to make it work and expose it to the web, we have to do, no, don't worry about agent. We will have to create a layer on top of it, an extra code on top of this to make it a web API. Because these classes, they are not aware that there is even a web. They are normal class, it has methods. For me to use it, I have to first require it and then make calls of these functions. Yes? So what I want to show you here and to stress, first you might start with the repositories. Make sure they are working. You can test them without even worrying about the web. Once everything is working and you are happy with it, it's time now to make it accessible through the web. And to make it accessible through the web, what should I do? Yes, I should create a web API for it. So this is what I wanted to show you. Now, for web API, what is the idea of this web API?
We have about 4 methods.
Sorry?
We have about 4 methods.
So first of all, we have the web. What drives the web is this protocol called HTTP protocol. Us as developers, we must understand, at least in a basic way, this HTTP protocol. So the idea of this HTTP protocol is that web clients, such as the browsers, they can make requests to servers, to web servers. And how they make these requests? Yes, by sending a simple text messages. And these text messages, the format of the text message is very standardized. It follows certain well-defined standard. So if I want to access a particular resource, particular file, particular function, I need to use one of the verbs, depending on my intention, what my intention is. If my intention is just to read and retrieve some file or some data, which verb should I use? Get. If my intention is to create a new resource, like let's say create a new hero or a new account, I should not use get, I should use post. If my intention is to update some existing hero or existing account, what should I do? I should use put. If my intention is to remove a resource, I should use the verb delete. So HTTP as a protocol comes with many verbs. The most important ones are these four verbs. Get to read, post to create a new resource, put to update, and delete to remove. Okay. So this is the first concept of HTTP as a protocol. It uses verbs to indicate the intention of what the client wants. Second very important concept is that each resource has a unique address. Everything on the web has a unique address. Sorry? Programmatically, we call it a route. But at the end of the day, if you want to access QU website, it has its own address. Within that website, the logo has its own address. You can get just the logo by itself. And I showed you last time this. Okay? So the idea is that the web is made up of what?
Unique IDs.
Sorry?
Unique IDs, everything has IDs.
Unique IDs of resources. We call them resources because they could be anything. They could be files, it could be an HTML page, it could be PDF, it could be a video, an image. So a generic name for all these type of things, what do we call them? Resources. Yes? Now, these resources, what they have? A unique address. For you to access a resource, what do you need to know? The address. And then, when you access it, you have to choose one of the verbs. How do you choose the verb? Depending what you intend to do with that resource. Are you intending to read it? If yes, use get. Are you intending to create a new instance? Use post. Are you intending to change an existing? Use put. Are you intending to delete it? Use delete. Yes? It's a very simple protocol. So the protocol says a verb with the URI, with the URL, for you to ask something, for you as a client, as a web client, to ask something from the web server. What do you need to provide the server? Very good. And the verb. Two things. The verb and the URL. Okay. Now, us as developers of the web server or the web API, what we do is our job is very, very simple. All we do, we take each verb and each URL and say to the server, teach the server what to do. If something comes and asks you with this verb and this URL, this is what you should do. If something comes and asks you for that verb and that URL, this is what you should do. That's what Web API is. Programmatically, it's a very simple concept. Okay, so let me now show you concretely what this means. At the end of the day, I will be really creating some kind of router. You know, if you have taken some networking, really a router it decides when the packets come, it decides where it should send them. okay, based on the destination address, and based also on the protocol used in the packet. Now, first of all, when I create a web server, I know the server will be running and listening at some port. Those of you who did networking, some networking course, this will make a lot of sense for you. If not, don't worry too much about it. It's very simple idea. Each machine, okay, you can run multiple programs. Now, you can expose these multiple programs to the outside world. Yes? Now, each program will have to listen on different ports, because when the messages come at the networking layer, it needs to know to which application the message should be sent to. So to do this in Node.js is super simple. We don't need to spend a lot of effort. All we do, we create an Express application, which is we download this Express package, we create an instance of Express, and then we ask it, please go ahead and start listening on some port. So in here, I choose the port 8090, and it's when I do listen, it will, this application is now accessible through this port. So the application now is accessible through this port. Now, the port, yes, the messages will start coming to that port. In this case, which port? 9080. Localhost means the local machine, my local machine here. Okay. Now, now the server is up and running and listening, but the server does not know anything. We have to teach it مما علمنا الله. We have to نعلمه مما علمنا الله. We have to teach it what to do for each case, because it's here, of course, the Express people, they made it so easy for us, because there's a lot of complication to make an application listen to a particular port. There's a lot of networking details involved. We don't need to deal with all of that. They made it super easy for us to make our application start listening to a particular port. But they cannot do everything for us. Now we have to decide what to do for each scenario, for each verb and URL. We have to decide what to do. Yes? So that's why, of course, I can come here in a simple scenario. I can come here and start teaching this application what to do. For example, in here, if I come through and say slash, requests and response. I'll explain this shortly. So, in another way, I need to define the routes. I need to teach the app the routes that my application has and what each route is supposed to do. So in here, if somebody requests slash, yes, using a GET request, then I should respond. By the way, Express already made it super easy for me. It sends to my functional to my route handler. It provides two built-in objects automatically. You get two objects: a request object and a response object. Request is to read what's coming from the request from the client, and the response is to use it to send the actual response. So in here, let's just keep it super simple. I will just say response dot send. No problem. We can just put it super simple. Keep it simple. Or let me call it here. If somebody comes to hello slash hello, this is what they will get. Salam. So if let me try it.
Slash hello, like after the port,
After, yes.
after the local host.
Yes, after the local host name. I don't need to repeat this if somebody comes to localhost 8090. I don't need to.
After all of this.
Yes, yes. The slash means the root of my server. The slash means the root. Anybody comes to the root followed by hello, this is the handler. That function will be the handler of this path. Okay. So if I go to there and then do slash hello, I will get this.
So this,
Yes?
this is what we use, for example, in the SPA, like SPA component changes. I would say like this happens.
We will come to that. But for now, we will come. For now, I want you to really understand. Don't let this web API kind of confuse you. I want you to really understand what's going on. We will build on this. So basically, for now, I want you to focus with me on the web API concept. It is clear? I am teaching it the routes for each verb and URL. What is the function handler? Now, I can continue teaching it in this file, teaching it all the routes, but it's not very elegant. This file will become too long and too crowded. Yes, so I'll put it for modularity purposes. I put my routes in a separate file. And this file is basically called routes. You can call it whatever, routes. And the Express has a built-in object called a router, and I define all my routes in the router. And then I say to my app, please use this router. A router is nothing but associating a URL and a verb with a function handler, with a handler, which is a function. So can somebody please read for me what the first line is saying? Here, this one. What this one means.
This is the API
Yeah, what does it say to the server?
When he gets into the heroes,
Yes.
I'll get the get heroes.
No,
If the
no.
post is get, it will get the errors, and if it's post, it will post a new error.
Very
Through
good.
the service.
Yes. So basically what's going on here, if somebody comes to /heroes, if a request comes to /heroes, using get verb, using the get verb, this function will handle the request. This function, get heroes, will handle the request. If somebody comes to /heroes, but using which verb? Post, then the add hero will handle the request. Of course, I can put the code here of the handling, but just for modularity, I put it in another file. Yes. Yes. So this other file now is aware of the web. This file is now aware of the web. You can see here, it receives a request and response. And it, in our case, it just goes to the repository, it gets all the heroes, and then it says response.json and sends it off. It tries to do this. If something goes wrong, it will send a 500 some error on the server side and send the details of the error.
service communicates with the repository, gets data, and then from the service goes
To the route. Yes. For modularity, you can put all this in one file. There's no problem. All this repository, service, router, and app is just for modularity. Yes.
File router, we're going to put all the routes for the whole specification.
Yes, for simple application. As application grows, you might have multiple route files. Maybe one route for heroes, one route for accounts, one route for each module you might have a route.
Still, you have to write everything manually. You have to specify each one. I mean, if you
Yes.
have a huge project.
Of course. Here, like Express or Node.js will not be able to help you. This is application specific. Because an application at the end of the day will be made up of URLs. And then these URLs are accessed using verbs. You, as developer, you need to map verb plus URL with the handler. Verb plus URL with the handler. Verb plus URL with the handler. You can put all this in one file. For simple application, it's fine. But as things grow, it becomes complex. You need to do modularity. You put the repository, you put the code to read and write. You put the handling, like the handling of the route, into a service. And the route is very simple. It's just calling a method from the service. You just keep things organized. Is clear? Now, once you have all of this up and running, what you do is you start testing the API. Before you dress it up in a user interface, You can test the API in plain, using the, if it is GET, you use the browser. There's no problem whatsoever. You can use the browser to test it. API/heroes, it gives you all the heroes. I can also test for one particular hero. It gives me one particular hero. Now, if I want to test the post and the delete and the put, I cannot use the browser, because the browser, if I want to use the browser, I have to have a user interface. I don't want to spend user interface time on user interface yet. My purpose is to make sure the web API is fully working. So what I can do, I can basically go to Postman and say, I want to test post, okay? And I'll send it this request. Yes, the Postman is the client, yes. Okay, so let's say I have a new hero. I put the new hero in the body of the request. So you know, request has two parts, the header and the body. The body is the message that I'm sending to the application. The header just has a protocol information. In the header, I will have get. This is what will be in the header of the request. I will have post. In this scenario, I'll have post. This is where it will be going. And also, I put one more thing. I am putting here a header called content type. I'm just telling the server, by the way, the body I am sending you, what type of data I am sending you, it is text, it is application JSON. Okay? And then that's it. Once I am happy, I can send this request. Everything goes fine. As you can see here, everything is fine. So I get a status code called 200 OK. Everything went fine. 200 OK. Sorry, 201 in this case. 201 created. And if you want to, yes, of course. Now, if you want to, you also get in the headers of the response, you get one more header called location. This is for you ليطمئن قلبك يعني. You can go back to that location. You will find the new hero that was created. So I can take this one. I can either go to the browser and put here 6, and I can get the new hero. Yes, sir. Or I can even do it from here, of course. I can put here get 6, and I get the new, and I get the hero that was created. Now, if I want to update it, which verb should I use? Yes, update is put. And I'll be sending it to this location, hero/6, and the body will be this, but I have to put the ID here, because it is an existing hero, so it has an ID.
When you send, it didn't give it an ID?
Yes, when I created the one, the server generates the ID. It's a server generator. See, typically IDs are generated by the server. So when you created your account, it's QU, your student ID is not generated. It's not decided by you. It's by the server side. Okay, so let me choose something here. I change the name. I can change other stuff. Okay, and then do send. Everything went okay. Everything went okay. Everything is fine. If I go here, refresh, it is Ahmed Ali. Yeah, it's clear. So I'm using get to read, post to create new one, put to update it, and delete if I no longer need it. So I'll do here delete, and then this I'll send the URL, the request to this URL hero/6 and send. Everything went fine. Now if I get it, if I try to get it, it says here not found. It has been deleted. Is clear the idea? The web API now is fully working. Now, if I want the users to use this application, I'm not going to install for them Postman and expect them to know JSON and start fiddling around with this. What should I do? Give them a nice user interface. So to do this, I need to go back to my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills to provide a user interface. And this user interface, what it's supposed to do? Interact with the web UI, get the JSON, and convert JSON to HTML. That's what the UI will be. If I want to create a new hero, I'll have to provide, let's say, a form, allow the user to enter all the data, submit, and then when the user submits, the JavaScript should call the web API using post and send a message to the server side. So I just give you a glimpse, so you just get hopefully excited about it, and next time we can discuss it in much more details. So just to give you a small glimpse of how I built this first page. Here is the first page. How I get this list. Convert it from the JSON to HTML. Okay, so let me show you. Here is my, under public, there is one HTML file called index. You can see here this HTML file does not have, it has the menu, but it does not have any heroes. There is no hard-coded heroes, the heroes are empty. There is a div there, but there are no heroes there. Okay, now this file also is referring to my hero.js. I have a hero.js, which will be on the client side. Okay, so if I go here, JS, there's a file here called hero. So let me, all the magic is happening here, and this is the purpose of this session, and next session I will be explaining what's going on here. Okay, so on the web, what I'm doing here, I will listen to events in the web, in the user interface. There are events that will take place, and I will listen to them and react to them. One of the events that will happen is when the page gets loaded. When the page is loaded, when the actual page is loaded in the browser, this event will happen. What I want to do when this page is loaded, I want to call this function called onPageLoad. And what this function will be doing, it will go to the server, it will say get the heroes, it will get this heroes div, there is a div on the input. It will get this div here, yeah, and then it will basically convert the heroes from JSON to HTML and inject it in the page. And suddenly, the heroes HTML will be shown on the page. Now, let me show you this get heroes. So, this get heroes is using an API called fetch that I will explain, inshallah, next time. So, it is all it's doing is doing exactly what we're doing through the browser. It's talking to the server using fetch. It will get back JSON document. It will return it. Now, when it returns it, what do I do with this JSON document? I'll convert it to HTML. Okay, this is the function that converts it to HTML. This is a bit tricky, but it's straightforward. I'm using the string literal. Remember string literal? So what I'm doing here, I am looping through every hero and converting it to a TR. So a hero becomes a TR. And I'm reading each hero, the name, the type, the code, and repeating this. At the end, I'll get a table at my hand, and I stick it into the page in the div called hero. That's it. This will do the magic. Now, this is like kind of the poor man's approach, a simplistic, very rudimentary approach. This is kind of Ashabul Kahf approach. We will see much more sophisticated ways of doing it. But this will work. As you can see, will work. It's very nice. But we will see a much more advanced way of doing it using Vue.js, something like Vue.js. But first, you need to learn it how to do it yourself from scratch using plain JavaScript. Then later on, we will use a framework to help us do this in more elegant way. You get the basic idea? Same thing for if I want to post. You can see here for posting. Let's say for delete. All I do, I'll go and delete by calling the fetch, give it the URL and give it, say to it, go ahead and delete. Same thing for when I do this one, I am loading this form when the user types everything. I will collect what they have. I will collect using JavaScript what the user have typed and then send it using post, using JavaScript. Okay, so inshallah, this is what I will explain next time.